And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast. I am here tonight to cover the Rowdies. Even though we are out of season, we got to keep talking about them. Carlos, I see sometimes we even got to keep wearing their stuff to show how much we support them.
Always. James, we are however many weeks we are into the off season. Still kind of quiet. Still kind of a quiet off season.
Agreed.
Big signing we talked about recently with Ollie Bassett from the Canadian Premier League, who I'm still very high on, and I'm really looking forward to diving more into what he'll bring into the team in the near future. But other than that, still a pretty quiet off season. We got a couple re-signing announcements and one new one that we haven't talked about yet on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
A really big one, physically and metaphorically. Other than that, still pretty quiet. I'm really looking forward to the offseason starting to ramp up. It's a really fun time when I can kind of keep an eye on the transfer tracker. Shout out to John Morrissey, USL Tactics. He does a great job keeping all that info in one place. When it can be sometimes hard to find like who's who and who's where and what the situation is. Long list of free agents, plenty of great talent out there. Really looking forward to seeing what the Rowdies do in terms of going to get more depth and whatnot. We'll see what happens there. But James, before we do any of that, one last time today, we get a chance to look back on a wild 2024, talk about our goalkeepers, talk about the team as a whole, maybe one last time, what we give the coaching staff in terms of a grade. There's just one last moment of reflection here as the year comes to an end before we start looking ahead. Again, it's going to be a busy time. I'm really hoping things really pick up for the Rowdies this offseason. We get some big name signings and some exciting depth pieces. But I'm sure that's coming in the near future. So let's take this opportunity while it's still slow to reflect one more time. James, before we do any of that, how's it going down there in sunny Tampa Bay?
It is fine down here. I am enjoying the temperatures, I guess, but I would like a little less sun personally so that I could go outside without getting sunburnt. That is my big problem with the outside and the sun.
Yeah.
I am very pale for anyone who has not joined us on the YouTube or seen a thumbnail on Twitter or anything like that. So yeah, that's my only complaint here. Otherwise, I'm doing fine. And we do have, like you said, we do have a couple of things related to the Rowdies 2024 season to go over. And the biggest thing I think that we have right now to talk about, which we will do in the second half of the show, is how we're feeling about 2025 at this very early stage, when we're not even in 2025, in fact, to see, get a base layer of our feelings, get a base layer of where we think we need to improve or not, all of that kind of stuff. So that is what we will be doing tonight. If you have any interest in any of that, please stick around, and we will talk about, finally, to end the show, the latest re-signing by the Rowdies. Just like Carlos said, very big, both physically and metaphorically. Please like and subscribe to us on YouTube, any major podcast platform. And of course, please follow RBLR Sports on all social medias at RBLR Sports. You can do that on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, and whichever other ones I'm forgetting that Eureka keeps us up to date on there. Carlos, let's do the last little bit of individual player grades, and that is the goalkeepers tonight.
The home stretch.
That's right. That is the home stretch for us. And we will start with Jordan Farr. 30 years old, 34 appearances, including 11 shutouts, 44 conceded goals on the other side of that. And also one very interesting statistic for Jordan Farr. He had an assist this past season. You don't see that very often for a goalkeeper. So
was that the Sacramento game, James? Remembering that right?
I don't remember offhand, but I feel like it stands out. So if you remember it immediately, that should probably be it.
I'm thinking I'm thinking that was the big boot to Charlie Dennis, right?
Yes.
That's the only. I'm surprised. I forgot they counted that as an assist, but I might be making that up. We'll come back to that. We'll circle back.
But he also had 4 RBLR Sportsman of the Match awards, I guess, designations over the course of this season. And he has since moved to DC United in MLS, where he will join former Rowdies player Connor Antley, although I don't think that their time ever overlapped. So, yeah, Carlos, we have Jordan Farr. This is still our player grades, so obviously we'll have to give him a grade, but
Yeah.
let's get into how we felt the season went for him. And I'm assuming that everybody is relatively on the same page for this one.
Yeah. This is I like that the goalkeeper player grades are coming at the very end in terms of like how we separate the player grades, because obviously this will be a quicker one with only 3 goalies on the roster and only one that actually played significant minutes.
One that had no minutes at all.
Correct. That one being Jordan Farr that played these significant minutes, like you said, with that incredible assist, which I'm gonna say is that Sacramento game, which was really cool because that was our 1-0 win. So, still, I think my favorite performance from the Rowdies this season. So, shout out to Jordan Farr for contributing to that goal, and also having a great game in goal that game. I think that kind of characterizes a lot of how Jordan Farr's season went, because he had several memorable games, big games as well, right? But then there was also more than a few, sadly, memorable games for maybe the wrong reason. Especially early to middle part of this year, it seemed like he would kind of charge out of the box a bit brashly, whiff a ball every once in a while, and next thing you know, the other team scores a goal on an empty goal, right? And I think the unfortunate bit here is that I can't even quite remember like all the games in which that happens, because there's more than a few instances. And again, I don't think he had a terrible season, all things considered. Like, he still had more than a few really big games. I think Jordan Farr's performance this season just kind of stands out as not up to like the Rowdies' par, as we've been pretty accustomed to really, really good goalies over the last several seasons, right? And we've talked about this before. For example, I think Evan Loro was a fantastic keeper. I also think his numbers were heavily supported by the best back line in the Rowdies' modern era of Jordan Scarlett, Forrest Lasso, and Aaron Guillen, all of which were playing fantastic, like 2 of which are still on this team, right? But both of which were playing their best soccer of their careers potentially, with a Jordan Scarlett who was also in the prime of his career. So Evan Loro, fantastic keeper, right? We had Matt Pickens, who's a legend in this club, right? We had McCarthy, who went on to start in a final for LAFC, right? Or
I
Philadelphia.
believe.
I think it was LAFC.
I believe, yes, after Maxime Crépeau was injured. And then keep talking while I pull up more information on John McCarthy.
John McCarthy played in a final at the MLS level and won a cup in that game, if I'm not mistaken. That's all to say. And I'm missing a couple.
That part is correct.
Yeah, I'm missing more than a couple really great goalies just off the top of my head. I mean, even, and this is kind of a random pull. This is a player I really liked back when I kind of really started following this team. Akira Fitzgerald was our backup goalie for Matt Pickens, and Akira Fitzgerald would come in and play fantastic games. Like, we've just been kind of spoiled in the goalie department. And Jordan Farr came into this club with a lot of expectations based on his incredible reputation and being the goalie of the year with San Antonio, Golden Glove winner. So obviously I'm saying all that to qualify what was an okay season for him, right? He didn't have the season I think we all would have hoped for. And I think this is something we've said for a lot of players who might have had higher expectations for. He kind of went down with his team, right? I think the back line did not do him any favors in a lot of these games, but he certainly didn't do himself any favors in a lot of the mistakes we can point to in these random kind of early games where he would step out and, leave an empty net for whoever we were playing. So I'm like, he didn't have a great season. I don't think it's entirely his fault in all these games. But in a few of them, he was kind of the guy we would point to at the end of the year, or at the end of the 90 minutes, right? We'd get on the podcast and we'd be like, Jordan Farr, like, I love you to death, but like, this was a mistake, right? All that being said, he's a fantastic keeper. And once he finds his rhythm again, once he finds that form he had in San Antonio, right, which was not that long ago, that 2022 season, right, when he had that Golden Glove year. Once that 2022 Jordan Farr comes out again, I mean, the 2022 Jordan Farr starts for an MLS squad. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think this was his best year, and he would admit that. So, and it's
I think
unfortunate.
he did do that in a couple post-game press conferences. So,
yeah. And it's unfortunate, not his best year came with the Rowdies. So we might remember him somewhat unfairly in terms of his performances, because again, I don't think it was entirely his fault in a lot of these games. His back line did not do him many favors. A back line that we talked about last week, I believe, James, or maybe a couple weeks ago. Back line that certainly needed to play a bit better this season. Guys that we would rely on a lot, your Jordan Doherty's, your Nguyen's, who didn't have the seasons they wanted either. So I'm laying that all out there because I think there was a lot of, I don't want to say unwarranted criticism of Jordan Farr, because there was warranted criticism in certain moments, right? But I think some of it was unfair. And it was unfortunate because I think Jordan Farr, again, is an incredible goalie. And I hope he finds that rhythm again at DC, in DC. I would love to go down to Navy Yard to see him play for DC United while I'm up here in DC. So it would be a lovely time for him to get that starting role in DC. All the best for him going forward. I will give my rating as an unfortunate C+. But if I had the opportunity, truly, and we didn't know he was going to DC, this might be a hot take, but this is a guy I would want back on this club next year. Like, he just has so much talent. It just was not indicative of the player he is this season. Again, not my decision. We already know he's going to DC United.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of irrelevant. But if I could do whatever I want, Jordan Farr would still be on this club next year. So long-winded way of saying I love Jordan Farr to death, and I would still defend him even after a questionable season.
I think that's fair. I think one of the biggest points that you made is just how spoiled we have been for goalkeepers. To your point, by the way, I did look it up. John McCarthy was in the MLS Cup final in 2022. He was actually the MLS Cup MVP in 2022 when LAFC won.
Yeah, He saved the penalty in that game.
That's right. Yeah. And he did just play all of LA Galaxy's season, including through the playoffs where they just won on Saturday. So that was John McCarthy. Now, to get back to Jordan Farr, of course, he is a good player. There's no doubt about that. This is also a down year for him. I would say there's no doubt about that. I agree with you. I will give him a C, not a C+, but a C. There are too many instances, in my head of him coming out of his box. He was supposed to get the ball. It's good. It's frequently described as brave goalkeeping, although that's also used when people go up for crosses and a goalkeeper will come out. So it's brave because in one instance you can get injured, in one instance you can completely miss the ball and create a relatively or a very high XG chance. So I think that the amount of times that happened, if that happened once, maybe if that happened twice, I would be okay, fair enough. I think that even happened at one or both of the games at IMG, but we just didn't get punished for the instance that it happened. So I will stick with a C for Jordan Farr for 2024. And just like you said, I still think that he's a very good goalkeeper. I think that he's got a lot more to offer, regardless of that being DC or any other club in the future. So I will hope for him that he does regain that form, and we wish him all the best, of course, just like we do every Rowdies player. But in particular, Jordan Farr was gracious when he came into the press conferences after games, and he said, we will be the first to admit that we haven't been at our best this season, and we need to get there again. Yeah. And I would try to get answers about how they do that. So he took those questions when it was a difficult time. So I appreciate that for him and any player.
Yeah. And by the way, when I was going through our recent goalies, I totally missed Connor Sparrow last season, by the way, another incredible goalie, CJ Cochran, season before that.
Yeah.
Who was on loan technically from OKC Energy. And then never went back there because there wasn't a club over there still. I don't know what CJ Cochran's doing these days. It doesn't say he's playing anywhere right now. He was an awesome goalie too. He had incredible games. Hope he's doing well. For whatever reason, you're listening to this, CJ Cochran. Hey, come hang out. We need goalies these days. We don't have any goalies. Speaking of
not back yet.
Yeah, they're not back. Speaking of not having any goalies, James, another goalie who is not coming back to the Rowdies next season, which I saw some folks were rather bummed out about because Phil Brano had some incredible moments in the last couple of seasons with the Rowdies and his limited playing time. This season, he was 28, turning 29. He had 2 appearances on the year, conceded 4 goals, unfortunately. We gave him 1 Man of the Match award. Can't remember what game that was. But we know he's not coming back to this team next year, not because he's leaving to another club, but because he's retiring from professional soccer. Yeah, I mean, I read his post. If you have a minute, go check out his post I think it was on Instagram. He put out a pretty heartfelt, explanation, detailing everything and detailing what soccer's meant to him. Super thankful for the Rowdies and the Rowdies fans. I will always remember that penalty save against Memphis in Memphis. Just one of my core Rowdies memories, up there with among the crazy finishes this team's experienced. Saving that stoppage time penalty, going on to win on a penalty 2 minutes later in stoppage time with Leo Fernandez. He had a great game all game that game. So Phil Brano, best of luck to you in short, with whatever the future holds for him. This season, hard to judge, right? I mean, when you only play 2 games, it's kind of difficult.
Yeah, definitely.
And especially looking at the numbers, 4 goals in 2 games is not ideal. But they were weird situations. He came in maybe not necessarily expecting to play. This was when Jordan Farr picked up an injury, I believe. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to give him a grade. I'll say B-, but it's kind of arbitrary. I don't really, I don't really have any reason for that. This is mostly a moment for me to say thank you, Phil Brano, for the incredible Memphis memory, and best of luck to you with whatever the future has in store. Because truly, he was such an awesome guy. I remember when he came down on loan from Forward Madison, right? Came down on loan from Forward Madison.
Yep. And we sent Raiko Rosarena the other way. So yeah, that's right.
That way. It was kind of loan exchange. Brano, first game at Al Lang Stadium as a sub. Obviously, he's walking around. He spent so much time just chatting with the fans and everything, meeting Ralph's mob. I'm down there, shaking hands, saying hi to the guys. And Phil Brano comes up to me and just says, hey, how's it going? And what's your name? Thanks for coming to the game. And I'm like, oh, shoot, you just got here. And he's going around, making friends already. Awesome guy. So truly, all the best for him, with whatever the future has in store. Hopefully it's soccer stuff. If you want to stick around the Rowdies, I'm sure there's a role for him somewhere. But yeah, Phil Brano, B+, I guess. I don't know. What do you say, James? Is that fair?
I think that's fair. 2 appearances and 4 goals conceded is difficult. Obviously, did get 1 man of the match within that time. I know that this was within the bad period of the year from August and afterward. And he was supposed to play. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was supposed to play the 2 games that we had at IMG. He did not play because of a head injury. He suffered a concussion during a practice session, so he was not able to continue, and he did not play those 2 games. If, in fact, I guess that must have meant that we had Tanner Aiken as the backup for those 2, although I don't remember that off the top of my head. So regardless, it's unfortunate that he didn't get a couple more appearances. And this is more of a little segment of reflection of the Phil Brano time. I'm not joking up everybody, but the Phil Brano time at the Tampa Bay Rowdies.
I see a tear coming to your eyes.
It must be. But I'll go with a B- as well. I think that that's fair, considering not only it's a thankless job being a backup goalkeeper for one thing, but you come in difficult circumstances. He did earn a man of the match in one of those from at least one of us, and it's a bit of a send off this year. So I will stick with a B- for him too, and he can get sent off on a B-. That's perfectly fair.
Yeah, like he had some unfortunate luck, because if you think back to the two, and we should have mentioned this earlier on when we started talking about him. Those 2 games he played, if you recall, was away to Monterey Bay, which was just an ugly game. Monterey goes up 1-0 in the 29th minute. We score. Jennings, Arteaga gets a penalty in the 84th minute. Monterey Bay scores just a stupid goal in stoppage time, 92nd minute. Okay, tie game. We get out of there with a point, and we felt like we should have gotten out of there with more. His second game was that Louisville game, right? In Louisville, a game that we actually played pretty well in, and he made a decent amount of saves. Louisville had 7 shots on target, and he stopped 5 of them. So he had a pretty good game in one of his 2 games. Obviously, 4 goals in 2 games isn't a great number, but Louisville's second goal also came in stoppage time. So Phil Brano just, I think, got unlucky also in his 2 games. So in limited minutes, getting unlucky, going away to one of the best teams in the league, and still making a pretty decent amount of saves. Great guy, great goalie. Again, worth reading his reflection on Instagram. It was pretty heartfelt and pretty cool, because if you look at this guy play, like, you see there's a lot of talent in here, and talent that would take him certainly just starting a role somewhere in the USL.
Exactly.
Almost certainly. So you see a 29-year-old retiring, and sounds pretty strange, but again, it's worth reading the personal reflection. I don't want to put any words in his mouth and misremember anything he said, but go check it out. Great guy. Best of luck, Phil. Hope to see you around outlaying. Like, we see plenty of former Rowdies around the area, so it'd be great to see him at games in the future.
I agree with that entirely. All right, our last one is going to be relatively easy here, folks. It is Tanner Aiken, 18 years old, 0 appearances on this season, academy signing, and was the 3rd choice goalkeeper for most of the year. Frankly, that's often how it goes for academy goalkeepers. They're trying to force their way into a bigger role, but it's very rare that you get a Gaga Slonina or Chris Brady, and both of them coming right after each other at Chicago Fire. That's an extremely rare scenario. So Tanner Aiken, unfortunately, did not get the benefit of the doubt there. And I'm not sure if I don't think he was listed as one of the returnees for 2025, Carlos. So we don't know his situation at the moment. Possibly he was looking at also going to college coming up. I don't remember what year he was supposed to graduate. He's 18, so you would assume a senior, but regardless, this isn't a non-grade as in a failure like it would be. This is just a non-grade in that we can't give him a grade if he did not have any appearances. I think that him showing up for training as an 18-year-old and obviously being regarded highly enough to actually get the contract, that's good, and that bodes well for his future, but we can't say much from this perspective where we didn't see any playing time.
Yeah. I am an A+.
All right, there you go.
No, I mean, there's plenty of goalkeeper content this year if you kept up with Rowdy social media. It seemed like the kid had a great time with Phil Brano and Jordan Farr. So more than anything, great experience for him. And something we didn't mention about Jordan Farr, by the way, we talked a lot about his performances in the season overall, which is what this podcast is about.
Mm-hmm.
But Jordan Farr is another great personality on this squad. He was one of the more like outgoing, personable people on this Rowdies team. I think that showed with the bits and pieces that we saw on social media of the relationship between the 3 goalies. It seems like Jordan Farr and Phil Brano opened their doors to the goalie room to this kid. Hopefully we're great mentors. Obviously weren't in the room, but I would imagine based on the vibe that all 3 had together, they seem to have had a pretty good time. So best of luck to Tanner. We don't really know what's going on with him. I would imagine, like you said, probably pursuing the college world. I don't know. I'd kind of be speculating, but I don't think there were any USL Academy contract kids that were listed as returnees. So maybe it's just kind of a different path process situation. Yeah. So best of luck to him. We'll see what happens. Plenty of USL Academy Rowdy kids that have had success going forward. Shout out Santi Castaneda, who's still doing incredibly well in Germany.
Kid is killing it. I
Um,
I'm kind of hopeful that he is knocking on the U.S. national team door for like maybe not the competitive games coming up in is it February or whatever it is, but maybe after that, maybe he starts getting a look right after that.
yeah, yeah. Kids doing numbers over there. Not getting the coverage it deserves, I think, on social media, but
Totally agree.
kind of hard to break through on like that mainstream social media energy when I think you're still in the second division, right?
Yep.
Better than the third division where he was playing a couple seasons ago. He's still
Yep.
moving on up slowly, putting his head down, doing the work.
And it should
The
be
third,
noted, Paderborn up until at least this past weekend, I didn't see how it finally came out after the whole weekend passed. But
yeah,
Paderborn went into the weekend top of the league, gunning for promotion. So keep that in mind.
yeah, yeah. We could be talking about a Rowdies Academy kid playing in Bundesliga soccer next year. Yeah, that would be really cool, wouldn't it? I wish we knew more about how like contracts worked in U.S. soccer, and how like the Rowdies, if anything, get anything out of his future, other than maybe just being able to say, "Hey, we sent a kid to the Bundesliga
Right.
eventually, and we can't too." Yeah, I always like keeping up with that kind of stuff, but again, it's hard to see. There's not much transparency in U.S. soccer contracts, as you probably know if you're listening to this podcast. It's kind of all hidden. So it's all speculation, but hey, who knows? There's a path. There's a path. If you're a Tampa kid and you want to be, a Santi Castaneda, there's a path now. And I think that's pretty cool. A Tanner Aiken, a Christian Ortiz, right? I mean, kids that are getting pro contracts. So who knows what the future has for him? A+. I don't know. Good luck, kid. Big things in store. Okay, James. That concludes all of our player reviews for this offseason. It's taking us a bit. We had some news pop in the middle of our scheduled player reviews a couple weeks ago. Player signings, player re-signings, right? Let's stretch this out a little bit. We got to the end of it. I think very comprehensively. We managed to talk about quite literally every single player that put on a Rowdies jersey this season, which has been a
And
really
some who
fun time.
didn't.
Some who didn't, some who only wore the practice jerseys and eventually made it down. Well, okay, I was gonna make a shout out to our player that made it down to Miami FC, who I'm sorry, but I'm already blanking on his name. Joe, what's his name? Center midfielder, played like 2 games.
Joey Desart.
Joey Desart. Some Joey Desarts, some Leo Fernandez's, right? We covered the whole spectrum. So this was fun, James. Now we have a chance to look at the team as a whole one last time before we start to look ahead. Coaching staff, maybe we give them a grade here, James. Let's just get concluding thoughts on this December 10th evening. We are, however many weeks we are removed from that last playoff game, in several weeks now removed from the USL Championship Final. Shout out Juan Tejada and Aiden Rocha, two of my boys who managed to get out of there with the title. Plenty of incredible games this season across the USL. Plenty of exciting games for the Rowdies this season. But give me your concluding thoughts as we come to a close in this 2024 year. We come to a close and reflecting on the Rowdy season. What are some overall concluding thoughts on how the season went? And maybe at the end of it, maybe we talk about giving the coaching staff a grade.
Well, I will give my team grade to start here. I think that that'll be easy, and then I can explain it. And afterwards, we can talk about the coaching staff. I will give the team as a whole a C. I think that that is bang on average for a Tampa Bay Rowdies team that is going through the transition that we saw this year. I wrote this little note for myself to come back to once we ultimately got to this particular episode. So I'm just going to read it now. In some cases, after a season where a team has not done as well as they expect, or just any debacle in soccer, usually you have to wait a couple of years, and then the players or the coaches involved are away from the team. They're away from the professional side of it, and they can give a little bit of a tell-all a couple years down the line about what went wrong. I don't think that this year is going to be anything like that. I don't think we're going to get some tell-all about what happened in August and afterwards. I think that this is... Yeah, I think that this is just going to be a case where, unfortunately, a team hit a part of the season where something went wrong, And then something went wrong after that, and it just continued to snowball negatively, but not because of any one reason that somebody could point to and say, this is what caused it. That's what caused it. There was a riff, there was a whatever. I doubt that any of that has occurred. I think that this is just a season that unfortunately didn't go the way that fans, especially, well, not to say that the team didn't. So everybody would not have wanted it to go. I think that it's very hard for a lot of people to transition from one team to the next. It doesn't matter if you're a player, doesn't matter if you're a coach, doesn't matter whatever the situation is. You look at Man United and how many coaches they've gone through. Not that that's the same level. I know everybody's going to say that, but it's
comparable.
Everybody's going to yell at me for that. But my point is that it's just difficult. And Robbie Nielsen is coming over from a system that has a very set structure that they've had for quite a while. As much as the Scottish League does change things up every now and then, you know what the top flight is, you know what the second flight is, you know there's promotion and relegation, all of that kind of stuff. You know the travel times, you know the conditions. It's pretty much the same in Scotland every single year in that sense. In America, that is actually a little bit different. There are going to be different numbers of teams in each division. There is no promotion and relegation, so you have to look at trophies as the end-all be-all. The Rowdies are only up for 2 trophies, and that's kind of what you have to look at. Maybe next year the Jägermeister Cup expands and there are 3 trophies that we can play in. Personally, I would love that.
I'd love that.
But there's so much that Robbie Nielsen does have to get used to here. The travel is ridiculous compared to Scotland. I will say that for starters. The weather is ridiculous compared to Scotland. He also had 2 hurricanes. Those didn't totally coincide with the bad part of the season, which again started in August, at the beginning of August, and then all the way through to, I would say, the IMG games and the first playoff game. So there's a lot to get to know before you can really start to gel with a team. This wasn't a team that he made. It was a team that he inherited. And I think that it's a good team. It's a team that we could have done a lot of stuff with. I said that multiple times over the course of this season. And it's unfortunate that it didn't go that way, but sometimes it doesn't. So I feel like the team overall gets a C. And if I'm giving the coaching staff a grade specifically, I will probably give them a C- for failing to react to the way that the team was going up through August and then October. November is where we actually did well again. But you have to also remember, while I caveat the negative side, you have to caveat the positive side too, and say that up until August, we were actually not that far away from Charleston and from Louisville City ahead of them. We were not probably going to catch them, considering how well they did over the stretch.
Yeah.
But if we had continued to at least maintain the prior form, we would have stayed third. We would have been able to host some playoff games. Who knows after that? It's a little bit more different, and there's a little bit more nuance. So I'm going with a C for the team for all the reasons that I said, and a C- for the coaching staff for failing to rectify the negative part of the year.
Yeah. James, I have a way that I'll go about this very quickly to point out some highlights and lowlights. I'll give you my top 3 games this year, the ones that I'll remember probably for the rest of my time as a Rowdies fan, because they were fun, because they were a Rowdies win, because they were games I was mostly at or watching very intently. The games that you kind of think of 2 or 3 years down the line, you're like, wow, it's a crazy game. So my number 1 is that Charleston game at home, the 4-2 win over the summer.
Charleston, I think that's going to stand out for a lot of people.
Yeah. Charleston goes up 2-0 with a Torres goal in the 8th minute, wonder goal. Smith scores 5 minutes later in the 13th minute. We're in the middle of this kind of patchy stretch. It seems to all be going downhill. RTI gets a penalty 38th minute, working our way back into it. Perez scores right off the bat to start the second half, tie the game 2-2. Nate Worth, wonder goal, Rowdy's goal of the year, according to the public voting on Twitter. And Damien Rivera scoring the cherry on top with a lovely finish in like the 102nd minute, if Fatmov is right here. Insane game, a game that I'll always remember, a game that I very thoroughly enjoyed chirping the Charleston goalie for when he was talking so much smack at the end of the half.
I forgot about that part of it. That stood out so much.
You can probably recall the part when he's making a fool of himself at the start of the second half, where he's like messing with the goal and complaining that the goal is like, I don't like ever so slightly off. The net is off. I don't know what he's waffling about. He's waffling about something.
He must have been complaining that it was too big the way that it went.
Yeah. It was so gratifying when Perez comes out and immediately knocks a goal in less than a minute later. That was incredible. Thank you, Josh Perez, for that awesome moment. I will take with me probably for the rest of my time as a Rowdies fan. Easy 2 and 3 are that Sacramento away game. Another game that I figured would be a turning point for this squad. Charlie Dennis goal, who would eventually leave us for Phoenix. And then my easy 3 is an incredible win against Louisville at home. Another thrilling one. Where we go up 2-0, Louisville comes back, makes it 2-2 by the 51st minute in the second half. And we needed Damian Rivera, beauty of a goal in the stoppage time in the 92nd minute. One of the craziest stadium reactions I've seen in a regular season game. In terms of like a crowd eruption. Awesome time this summer. So those are my easy top 3. I wanted to throw those out there because despite how C- this season might feel, there were incredible moments of just pure joy, ecstasy, entertainment at Al Lang Stadium. And I think that's why you and I, James, still go back to as many games as we possibly can, even while I'm up here in DC. Those like individual moments that you'll carry with you for a very, very long time. That's kind of why you go to these games. You want to win these championships, obviously. That's why we talk. That's kind of what we do this podcast for. We want to figure out where we think we could be better as a team, right?
Yeah.
But these 3 games in particular, those 2 at home especially, man, those were awesome games to watch. Those were really, really fun games to watch. So shout out to the entire squad for giving us some great memories this season. But I think to make it a fair season review and not be the eternal optimist that I seem to be on this podcast. There's plenty of games we can talk about that were maybe equally as ugly, right? You have, well, I'll combine the Loudoun games into one. We got swept by Loudoun this year, which is never really acceptable at home and away, obviously. We lost an ugly one to Detroit at home. We lost an ugly one to Detroit away, right? I mean, there were some really ugly games, ugly losses, some equally ugly draws, right? Maybe more of those kind of ugly results than there were memorable, thrilling, exciting results, positive results. Probably more of those negative results than there were positive results. That's kind of why we ended up where we are in the table. But again, I think what did you say? Overall team review, C-? Was that what you said?
C for the team, C- for the staff.
Yeah, I think I'll do C and C. I'll do C for the team performance this season, and C for the staff. I think it goes hand in hand. So I won't change it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's worth just mentioning as an honorable mention that Indy game at IMG to close out the year, right? I think that's one more memory I'll take with me for the rest of, I don't know, my life maybe. That was a really fun one to watch on TV. Seeing these guys bounce back after just the chaos of these back-to-back hurricanes. After, by the way, losing the first game back on the field after those in North Carolina, I think it would have been really easy to just kind of fold and drop all 3 games. Build some momentum, went into playoff strong, won a great game in Detroit in penalties. So all that being said, some incredible moments. I'll take these with me for a while, but I won't say like it was a success by any means. Obviously, that's why we're talking about C's here. There was just it never really clicked in that middle part of the season, right? I think that's where everything went wrong. You dug yourself too deep into that hole, and you can't catch up to a Louisville who finished with 76 points, right? You just can't. Even though we played 2 really great games against them. Like I don't think our spot on the table is indicative of how good the team is at all. It's indicative of how we played most of the regular season, which is about average. But that's so far below what the team is capable of and what the team roster was. The team roster is top 3 in the league at minimum. So I think the onus then going into next season, without talking about reflection or looking ahead too much, the onus then is on who, James? The coaching staff, right?
Yeah.
Now you're going to have a full off season, right? It's not going to be that much of a transition period anymore. You had this whole year for it to be a transition period. Now it's about using these core guys that you have, using these additions to the team, right? The depth pieces that we'll inevitably go out and grab, but we have most of the starting lineup already. So that's a really great place to be. Let's see what Robbie Nielsen can cook up for next season. I have trust in him. I think I do. So looking back one last time, I think a C is a fair grade. I think so. Plenty of memorable moments. Watch the highlights of those if you're bored. That's what gets me through some quiet soccer days. I'll watch a random Rowdies game. That Louisville game and the Charleston game at home, both good recommendations. If you have nothing going on, you want to rewatch a Rowdies game, those are the ones I'll stick with me from this season. Pretty clearly. The Detroit game, playoff, that deserves a shout out too. That was a gritty performance, James. So didn't end up in a title, unfortunately. Lost to FC Dallas in the Open Cup.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, like the Open Cup game against Birmingham, I totally forgot about that game too. I mean, just insanity. 6-4 final. Like, I think that's what's really cool.
That was heart attack inducing.
Yeah, I think that's what's so cool about playing so many games in this season. There's so many memorable moments. So take those with you. The season's a wash. It's done. Nothing we can do about it now, right? Take the positives with you going into next season, and let's see what we can build on with the guys we have.
Yeah, I think that's all good to remember. I had this question for us later, so I'll move it up and say, Carlos, there are a couple of moments that you already hit on from 2024 that will stick with you, and I want to highlight those real fast, and then list a couple of others that you didn't have. So Charleston, definitely for me. I think now that you mention it, the Open Cup games against Birmingham and then against Dallas, the Birmingham game was just like absolute insanity. I couldn't believe that they came back. And then after that, we went into extra time and we were like, okay, so it's effectively 0-0. Let's just start again. And they did. And they, and they scored 2. And it was like, okay, it was almost like that never happened.
A bicycle kick, by the way, included in there.
Yeah. And then he got a red card, Manuel Arteaga. And we played Birmingham a few days later. Unfortunately, we lost that game. The FC Dallas game, we had so many chances, and Martin Paws was a brick wall in net for them. It was absurd, the amount of chances that he saved.
And the kid that scored the goal for FC Dallas, I had no idea he played there. One of these like young talents from Ecuador, Patrick Delgado, who was kind of under the radar, out of nowhere, blew up on Ecuadorian media again for this insane goal he had against the Rowdies. Just a wild game, that one too, James. You're right.
Yeah. The Charleston game, definitely up there. I think that all of us are going to remember that because of the circumstances. And then before Nate Worth's goal, let alone how good the goal was itself.
Yeah.
And the last game in particular that I wanted to highlight was the, well, I guess it's both of them, but in particular, the IMG game against Indy 11. Taking in the 2 games at IMG was super weird because the tickets were only available to season ticket holders, except in the Indy game, we also had a traveling support group from Indy. So that was weird. I don't know where they got tickets or how that happened. Anyway, the point is, the game against Hartford, we had to get a result. We literally had to get a result. Otherwise, they could have knocked us out of the playoff spots at that point. So we get the result. And then we go into the game versus Indy 11. And there we just blew them out of the water. The goal that Leo Fernandez scored in that game, he originally tries to hit a free kick. It goes straight into the wall. So he takes it right off of that deflection and smacks it back and puts it past the goalkeeper. That was incredible. Side note to that whole game, I said that there was an Indy 11 traveling support, and there were like under 10 people there who were specifically Indy 11 fans. They were wearing Indy gear. They were singing Indy songs. They are from Indiana. I don't know how they got the tickets. Separately, there was a group of close to 30 people who were wearing red. They were wearing red, Indy 11, salty on the back. So I go up, and this is something that'll stick with me. And it's a fun little anecdote. I think that everybody listening will enjoy it, if you'll indulge me. Hunter Schulte is an MLS player with Portland Timbers. He's originally from Alaska, and he moved to the Portland Timbers Academy. He's a goalkeeper that they signed to their first team. He's not ready to play for their first team, so they have loaned him to Indy 11, which is where he is now. I see all of these Schulte fans, and I'm like, okay, I happen to know that Hunter Schulte's from Alaska. Are all of these people here from Alaska? I go up and I talk to somebody, and I think I accidentally ended up talking to his dad. It was very coincidental, but his dad said, I am originally from the Lakewood Ranch area. So they are all pretty close by to this game, specifically at IMG. They don't have tickets. They all got shirts, matching shirts, to go to the game. All of this family from around the Lakewood Ranch area, they come to the game. And then this is the real part that I wanted to bring up. I don't know who it was, but somebody within that group, possibly had been drinking, possibly not, ended up starting a fight that the security people at IMG's small stadium had to kick him out of the stadium. I still don't know which person this was. And so they make him leave.
Yeah.
Then the next thing, he's running through the parking lot in the background, going across the back of the stadium, closer to the entrance. And I see all of the security guards watching this happen. One of them starts chasing him again. And I'm like, what on earth is going on here? I never actually got the end of that story, but that is a moment, for better or worse. That's a moment that's going to stick with me probably for the rest of my life, that I saw the Hunter Schulte family there, and someone who was with them, whether or not he was direct family, who can say, was belligerent and ended up getting kicked out and ended up getting the security guards to chase him for God knows why. But
getting belligerent at the IMG Academy soccer stadium when there's a crowd of like maybe 600 people is one of the most absurd things I've ever heard, by the way. Hope that guy's doing well. Shout out to him. Unfortunate that they pulled up to see their kid concede 3 goals, but hey, it was a good game for us.
It was a good game for us.
There were some random moments this year, James. I think we could spend a lot of time going game by game and thinking about like every single game this season. I feel like I could mention a moment that was at least mildly interesting, except maybe like that Orange County away game or something. Which one was it? No, there's a random West Coast game that was one of the most boring games I've ever seen. Most games had at least something interesting to them, and I'm glad that for you it was a belligerently, potentially drunk, potentially related to, what was the name?
Hunter Schulte.
Hunter Schulte, starting a fight at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. What a time to be alive, James. We lived through 2 hurricanes to see this happen. Okay. Looking ahead, James, a little bit at least, right? We spent a lot of time reflecting here, thinking about last season, thinking about some of these important games, right? There's a lot that happened this season. Let's give some initial thoughts about where we're looking for 2025. We're going to spend a lot of time this offseason talking about wish lists, players we want to see come into the squad, depth pieces, maybe starters, goalies, certainly, right? We're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. I'm sure we're going to spend more time talking about Robbie Nielsen and kind of where the situation is going into the preseason in January and February, preseason games, right? There's a lot to talk about looking forward, but initial general thoughts looking to 2025, where we're feeling right now, what we're feeling right now. What do you got, James?
I think that we have really good bones for a good team. We're going to mention real soon someone who is re-signed that is a part of that core that we really wanted to bring back. And I think that putting it together is a possibility. Keep in mind, there were a lot of people who were upset at the management and in particular at Robbie Nielsen in 2024. I don't quite subscribe to that, especially not to their level. It should be noted how good a manager he is. But of course, him winning promotion from the Scottish second division to the top tier 3 times, that doesn't mean anything to Rowdies fans. Rowdies fans want to know what you've done for me lately. That's the nature of the sport. I get that. But I think that Robbie Nielsen is a good manager who can take what he has right now and turn this into not only a winning team, but in my opinion, what I would really like to see is a team that wins while giving a lot of minutes to youth players. And we've already seen one of those start. Christian Ortiz, possibly going to be, it looks like he could be one of my favorite Rowdies players if he continues on the trajectory that he's on, because it's very early days in his career. I will say that. But the trajectory he's on, already playing for the Dominican senior national team, there's so much good there. Andrew Mustali did very similar things. Nate Worth, we're going to sell him on for some big bucks, in my opinion. So all of those things, I think they can come together. And if Robbie Nielsen does what he did with Hearts, what he did with Dundee United, forget. It will. We have good things to look forward to in this second season. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I'll give you my 30-second spiel looking forward. This might not be a surprise to anybody listening or who's listened to this podcast for more than a few episodes. I'm very positive about 2025, as I usually am by the off season, right? I mean, this Rowdies club has gotten very good at keeping the core together, whatever that means. Maybe it's a bigger core, maybe it's a smaller core. We're good for now. I mean, we signed a lot of our key pieces back, right? Lewis Hilton, Leo Fernandez, are veterans in the midfield right now. Different types of midfielders, obviously, but incredible leaders to have on this squad. Aaron Guillen is back, an incredible leader on the back line who certainly did not have his best season last year, but who will inevitably find his form again, and bring that veteran experience to whoever we supplement on the back line, right? Up top, Arteaga re-signed with this club. He was our leading scorer. That's always a good thing to have back next season, especially when you put up the numbers he did. Had that middle of the year drop off like everyone else, but certainly found his form again. And I'm sure will be much more comfortable with this team now after a full season, getting another offseason under his belt, under Robbie Nielsen's system. Speaking of Robbie Nielsen will be more comfortable by 2025, right? He'll have another offseason with the squad. He'll have gotten a full season of what it means to be in the USL, the insanity that is the travel schedule, like you mentioned, James, the speed at which the game is played here, right? Just a lot of youth players, a lot of young guys on the wings running down the field at 90 miles an hour. Robbie Nielsen's got a feel for that now, right? It's different to know it in theory, to watch film, to read up on whoever you're playing, than it is to have that concrete full season of experience. You can say what you want about the Scottish second division. Getting promoted 3 times is pretty insane, right? That takes a good coach, right? He's got the talent. He clearly has enough of a reputation in Scotland to have made some waves when he decided to move to, the humble second division of U.S. soccer, right? You saw all the Twitter, stuff and the media talking about Robbie Nielsen making a move to the U.S. and to the Tampa Bay Rowdies, right? Who I'm sure a lot of folks in Scotland hadn't heard about since the 70s, right? So clearly enough of a reputation to have generated some interest when he made that move. I don't think that reputation is unwarranted, right? He looks to be a really great coach. I do think he's human like everyone else and just needed that time to transition. So I think that excuse is out of the books for next year, right?
Yes.
There's less transition. Let's see what you can do with it next year. I'm really excited. I think there's no need for an excuse for next season because I think it's going to come together pretty well. Go get some depth pieces, make a run at the Open Cup. My boy Marlon Tabora over here at Georgetown, Big East midfielder of the year last season. Incredible player, incredible guy. I'm going to throw his name in there in an early wish list request because I think he would be, right now, if you throw him in this team right now, he'd be a great depth piece. I can get some minutes as a starter potentially. Genuinely, kid's insane. We need some guys like that, right? Some youth guys that can bring some energy in the depth role and eventually make their way into a starter, right? Maybe that's kind of how we thought about Josh Perez going into the season. Guy was maybe a depth piece, earned his way as a starter, and eventually became one of our most important players this season. So It wasn't a 30-second spiel like I promised, but was slightly longer. That's where we are for next season right now, in my opinion. In short, again, we're gonna have a lot of time to talk about what next season could and will look like as we get player signings announced. But I think there's plenty of reason to be positive. Anybody who was like buy Robbie Nielsen after one season, I can't really disagree with you more strongly. Like, I think it's kind of a crazy take to do that after 1 year. Guy's a proven coach. So you can, record this, clip this if you want to say I'm wrong next season when we finish in like 6th or 7th again, if that's what happens. But I don't think that'll be the case. This team looks really good for next year. We're competing with a Louisville that re-signed like everybody on their team. So keep an eye on Louisville because they're going to be insanely good as always. But recap, everything I just said, we look good. I'm excited.
There we go. And to keep up that excitement real fast, we'll move into our extra time segment and say who it is that re-signed for the 2025 season. If you haven't already seen it, then we can finally tell you it's Forrest Lasso. He has signed a contract extension specifically for the 2025 season. Let's go. This is big news because he is a good player. He was in fantastic form before he suffered the ACL injury roughly in May of this year, I think it was. He was doing extremely well on both sides of the ball. He was actually contributing well, I shouldn't say more attacking wise, but the point is he's a very good player. He's got a lot more to give. And I think that at the USL level in particular, Forrest Lasso is going to be one of the best players available. So I'm super excited about that.
And he's a set piece god. Once he finds that touch in his game again, which again, you'll have a whole offseason to do that. Once he gets that part of his game up and running like he did this season, that is huge. You're talking about maybe an extra goal every 2 or 3 games for the squad that you wouldn't have otherwise, right? That's huge. And these games are all decided by 1 goal. So hopefully he finds that form because he can get up there and knock some headers in off corners, free kicks, whatever. Obviously a fantastic defender, but worth talking about his set piece game. Absolutely. Huge signing again.
Yeah, and we don't know that he will be back and ready in March. Just keep that in mind because it was an ACL tear. Those take particularly long to come back from. But when he does come back, it's going to be like a new signing. I'm excited for that. The MLS champions are LA Galaxy, the current club of John McCarthy. Other than that, probably don't really give too much of a heck, let's say, in USL circles. But whatever, good enough for LA Galaxy. I suppose that there are some players on there that I would be rooting for, probably their youth academy players who don't get enough time anyway. So on the other side of things, let's talk about the NCAA Women's Championship that was just last night. UNC beat Wake Forest. There are a lot of good players on both of those teams. I am hoping that, let's say, a Tampa Bay Sun organization was watching that game.
Keep your Sunnies.
Maybe getting some feelers out for potential new signings for the winter break. Who can say? But yeah, there were some good players there. Congratulations to the Tar Heels. And if anybody wants to watch it, the NCAA Men's Championship is coming up this weekend. The Final 4 are Denver, Vermont, Marshall, and Ohio State. So there you go. Carlos, there are a lot of big things going on in the world of South American soccer right now. None of the big 3 in Argentina can win. Botafogo just won both the Copa Libertadores and the Brazilian Championship. But there's something even bigger than that going on.
I have to throw this in here. I put it in our extra time notes because Liga is in the final for the National League in back-to-back seasons. That we're living in kind of like a golden age of Liga de Quito. This is really, really exciting. My dad and I are actually making the hike down to Quito on Friday to be there for the final on Saturday, which has been a mission to get tickets to for that game because they're playing at Independiente Stadium, which is a bit smaller. So getting tickets in that away end is an insane mission, James. Keep an eye on that. I'm going to be posting so much from the pregame leading up to that game, from the game, hopefully post-game celebrations, but not to get ahead of myself. They had a great first leg result at home. It was one of the most awesome, incredible Liga performances I've seen in a while. They ran out there and just played their game and won 3-0 in the first leg, James. So they have a really, really great advantage heading into the second game. So hopefully plenty of cool content on my Twitter. If you want to follow me at CarlosTPA10, I'll put up so many videos, pictures on there from Ecuador. So plenty of soccer in South America to keep an eye on. When there's no rowdy stuff going on. So Libertadores was really good. Really great final. There's a great Sudamericana final that Racing won. Sudamericana and Libertadores draws are coming up as well. So we're going to see who's playing who. Good stuff going on. There's so much entertaining atmosphere, excitement, just all across South America. Hopefully the Rowdies are paying attention to some of it and decide they want to go get some 18-year-old kid for probably pretty little in terms of how much of the risk is. So, yeah. That's my early wish list. I want the Rowdies to sign Marlon Sabora and some kid from South America that will sell for like $12 million to a team in Europe.
I would love that. That is a little preview of what's to come next week, because it is the holiday season, and for you and me, Carlos, Christmas in particular, we are doing our Christmas wish list for the Tampa Bay Rowdies in 2025. Woo! If that interests you, please tune in. It is our chance to speculate wildly on who we think the Rowdies should sign, who we think the Rowdies will sign, and who we just want to put names out there for.
Bobby Wood. You are a Tampa Bay Rowdy. Welcome to the club.
Please follow RBLR Sports for all of that, and you can catch us next week, of course, when we get into our Christmas wish list. In the meantime, we are on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, anywhere you are at RBLR Sports. I am mostly on Twitter at RBLR James K. You can use the hashtag AskRBLR, or Carlos, as you said, where can people reach you?
At CarlosTPA10 on Twitter. Again, I'm going to be down there for the final in Ecuador, so catch all the content. It's gonna be really fun. I'm just so excited to be there and share it with everybody on social media. It'll be cool.
Like and subscribe to our podcast and Carlos's so that you can get his information from Ecuador. You can get the full experience watching us on YouTube. If you would prefer just to hear us, no problem. We are also on the Spotify and iHeartRadio apps, Apple and Google Podcasts, again, wherever you get podcasts. So our review is in the books. 2025 is coming up. Thank you, everyone. Come on, you Rowdies.
Bobby Wood.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.